while now. It's a nice interactive way to learn some new stuff. If you're joining us for the first time, I will explain a bit more about Cambly later, but it's a great online platform. There's an app or it's on a website where you can get one-on-one lessons with tutors just like me in anything you need in English. Today, we're going to do origins of words. We're just going to let everybody kind of join in. Please send us a shout out. Tell us where you're from. Say hello so we know where you're from and we can say hello back. Please stick around until the end of our session. I'm going to give you guys a discount code that you can use to get, I think it's up to 36% off. So stick around for that. I see some messages coming through already. We've got someone named Sounds of the Universe from Lithuania. We've got Iam from Sri Lanka. We've got Sueli from Brazil, Luan from Brazil, Mehdi from Pakistan. Thank you so much for joining us. Please keep coming with the messages. Also, if you guys are joining late or you're wondering if you missed something or if you have to leave early, remember, the video is recorded. It's in the Cambly Live playlist. So if you want to watch it again, if you want to share it with friends, if you want to go over some of the stuff, not only in my class, but in other classes, go to the Cambly Live playlist and check it out. We see some more here. Love from Pakistan, from Bilu 1928. Vika from Ukraine. Abdel from Belgium. Harni from Indonesia, Burak from Turkey. Again, thank you so much for joining us. All right, let's get started on what we're going to do today. Now, it's going to be kind of a fun lesson, I think. We're doing origins of words, which means we're looking at where do some English words come from. What did they originally mean and how did that change to where we are now? And that's kind of fun. Because we're going to go through things that we hear all the time and words we use all the time in English. We're going to go through, as you can see, days of the week, months of the year. We're also going to go through different foods that we eat almost every day, things that we like to do, even some sports that we like to play. So we're going to cover a lot of fun origins of words. I see even some more messages coming through. Jamila from Nigeria and from Finland. Thank you. All right, so we're going to start today's origins of words by looking at a little bit of a history lesson where English itself came from. Well, a little history lesson because it's interesting to know what root your language and English may share, what is the parent, and where did our language, English, come from, and how is it related to its cousin languages? So we're going to have a little history lesson, and then we're going to look at where do words come from? Where do words in English come from? And we're going to go through that. Remember, this is an interactive lesson as well. So if you know of a word in your language that is very similar to a word in English, maybe we English people, maybe English stole that word from you. So tell us about it. We all would love to know. If you have an interesting origin of a word in your language, something interesting that started out as one meaning and then changed into another meaning, share it with us. If you have any questions about the origins of words, send them to us. We'll try to answer that. We don't know the origin of every single word, but we will try. And as you can see, there's a special word itself for the origins of words, okay? It's called etymology. Etymology means the study of the origins of words. All right, so let's take a look at where does English come from. And we're going to have this little history lesson. So most languages in Europe and the Middle East come from a central parent language called Proto-Indo-European. Proto-Indo-European. Words in English and in other parts and Europe actually still have a root in here. So we can understand, if we take the word black, which is a very common word, we use that all the time, it's a common color, that comes in from Proto-Indo-European, from something that meant to burn. And, well, we don't know exactly how it could have been spelled, but it would have been pronounced like that, like blag. And it meant burn, which when you burn something, it becomes black. So even today, words that we use have this central parent. That's where the word came from. So that is the main father and mother of most languages, Proto-Indo-European. And then we have another level under that, which is where English itself has more of a direct parent. And these are called Proto-Germanic languages. So Proto-Germanic languages are things like, obviously you can see it there, German, and other examples would be Dutch, Finnish, Frisian. Lots of those Norwegian, Netherlands languages, those European languages more towards the north. They are Proto-Germanic. So why does English have this as its more direct descendant, more direct parent? Because the next layer from this is Anglo-Saxon and Old English. And this is a little bit of history. Maybe you guys know that around about after the Romans left, so the Romans occupied Britain, England, for a long time. Then they left, I think it was about 400 AD. And then a lot of people from the north, from Norway, from the Norse, the Vikings, they came over to England and tried to settle there, as did a lot of people from what are called the Angles and the Saxons. They also came over, and all their languages mixed together. So that's why English, its parent, is the Proto-Germanic languages, because those people came over to England and brought their language. Now, obviously, English stole from other languages as well, because there's been a lot of wars and a lot of takeovers of England. The French took over England for a little bit and all kinds of things in history, but that's our main source of English. The Proto-Indo-European, the Proto-Germanic, and then the Anglo-Saxon Old English. And that's also where our structure of the language basically comes from. Obviously, there are always going to be exceptions, but if you look at the structure of those languages, the structure of English, there's a lot of similarities. So that's our little history lesson of where English itself comes from. And like we said, a lot of words, especially colors, which are universal, actually still come right through there from our 5,000, 6,000-year-old parents of our language. Then the big question is, where do words come from? So we've looked now at our history of English, very short history of English, and we've looked at our cousins of language. And now, where do our actual words come from? So, like we said, the first place that words come from are ancient languages. Now, we said we've got the ancient Proto-Germanic languages, but before that, like I said, there were the Romans. Before the Romans, there were the Greeks. And we still have a lot of words, as you're going to see when we do the days of the week, that have their origins in even ancienter languages. Many, many thousands of years ago, we're still using those words today. So ancient languages. Then we have words where we borrow. And we're going to go through a lot of examples of these later on. Borrowing is when maybe we had contact, where England had contact or a trade or whatever with another language and borrowed that word. Or when maybe a group was taking over England for a little bit, like the French, and then brought their language, and we took those words. So we borrowed or stole those words. And like I said, a lot of those words actually come from languages you may speak or know of. So if there's a word that you know that is so similar, bring it up in the chat because it's probably something we stole. Then we have words where we shorten. So we have a long word and we shorten it. An example of this is like the word influenza, which is a long word for what we use now when we say you have the flu. So the word flu didn't come from anywhere specific. It came from the shortening of another English word. And we still do that today. If you think about how we text on our phones, we are shortening everything. LOL is a more recent example of this, which is laugh out loud. And it shows that the language is still evolving. It's still changing all the time. So that is shortening. Then we have compounding. So compounding is when we take two words, we put them together to make a new word. And the easiest one that I can think of here is baby sitter. So we have the word baby and the word sitter. And by themselves, they mean very separate things. A baby is a baby. A person that sits is a sitter. And put them together, it's a completely new word. We've compounded this word together. Another great one could be snowflake. These are really easy. Snow, one thing by itself. A flake is a small piece of something. Put them together, you've got an entirely new thing. Compounding, very easy. All right, and then the next way, very similar to compounding, and I love this word, is to blend. And when we blend words, it's called a portmanteau. That means blending words together. And my favorite one here is the word brunch. So you guys may have come across this word. If not, you're learning a new word. Brunch is a portmanteau or a blending of breakfast and lunch. So we couldn't think of a word for like something that you have in the middle of the morning. It's not exactly breakfast. It's not lunch. We call it brunch. And that's where we get the word from. And that is still evolving today, especially. The internet spreads a lot of words like this. Words are always put together, a half of this, a half of that, and a new word is made. That's still happening very, very much. Then we have proper names. So a proper name is like my name, Daryl, or a surname. And we take a surname, and I'm going to tell you a very interesting story, and we make the surname the new word. And the first one we're going to look at here is something we eat every day called a sandwich. So where did the word sandwich come from? And this comes from a lord or a nobleman in England a long time ago. It was the fourth Earl of Sandwich. I think his name was John. And this is how the story goes of where a sandwich comes from. So the fourth Earl of Sandwich didn't like to get his fingers dirty when he was playing cards. So he didn't want to make the cards dirty by eating food and then touching the cards. So he would ask for 2 pieces of bread with meat in the middle so that his hands would only touch the bread and they wouldn't get so dirty. And other people apparently thought this was the most amazing thing and an amazing invention. And they said, I want what a sandwich is eating. And that's how the word sandwich came to be what it is today. Something everyone eats all the time. And it came from an actual person, an actual thing that he did, the fourth Earl of Sandwich. So there is an example of a proper name. And we're going to have a couple others later on. So it's a name of a person, and he does something, and then it becomes a word in English. I think that's really cool. And then the final place where words come from is mythology. So mythology, in case you guys are unfamiliar with that word, are the ancient stories of the Romans and the Greeks. So the stories about Hercules or Thor or Zeus or Jupiter. They were used thousands of years ago, and obviously we still know those stories today. Because they were used thousands of years ago, and we did our history lesson, they are still used today. And you're going to see this now when we take a look at our origins of the week and of the month. So mythology still plays a big part of how we get words. All right, so that's where words come from. We've done a few examples already. Let's get into some fun stuff and look at the origins of some of these words. So we're going to start with the days of the week. And like I said, this has to do with mythology. It has to do with the ancient gods and goddesses that people used to worship. Now, what they used to do is they used to give a name to the stars in the sky. So the one star would be Zeus or Jupiter, another star would be Mars or Aries, and what they would do is make each day of the week for that god or goddess, so that they would be kind of honoring that god or goddess on that day. And through time, that's how the days of the week got their names. So we're going to start with an easy Monday. Monday was originally the moon's day. The moon is an important body in the sky. There were lots of stories or beliefs about it. So there was a day of the week where they would kind of honor the moon. It was the moon's day. And obviously you can see how that became Monday. Tuesday is a little bit more complicated. So Tuesday was originally for Mars or Ares, which was the Roman or Greek god of war. Remember, the Romans and the Greeks, they had very similar gods, but they had different names because the Romans took the Greek gods and just gave them a new name. So Tuesday was for Mars or Ares. It was the god of war, all right, the god of war. Now remember, ours is a Proto-Germanic language. So we would take our names from sometimes the Norse gods, the gods of the Germanic tribes. So the god of war for the Germanic tribes was Tiu. I may be pronouncing that wrong, but it was Tiu. So it's the same god, basically. It's the god of war, except now we don't want to use the Roman and Greek name anymore. We are a Germanic language from Germanic tribes that came over to England. We're going to use their god of war, and you can see how that became Tuesday. So it's the god of war's day still. All right, so we've got Monday is the moon's day. Tuesday was from the god of war, Tuesday. And then we've got Wednesday. Now, Wednesday used to belong to Mercury or Hermes. I missed out a letter there. Mercury or Hermes. And in ancient Greek or Roman mythology, that was the god that was really fast. It was the messenger, and it could travel very, very fast. Again, when we're a Germanic tribe and we're a Germanic language, we don't want to use the Roman and Greek god names. So we use the god of, let's say, speed, the speedy god. And in the Germanic tribes, Germanic mythology, that was Woden, not Odin, but Woden. So it's still the god of speed, but it's Woden, and you can see how that becomes Wednesday. So Mercury, Hermes, very, very fast. Our very, very fast Germanic god is Woden. And we did a very similar thing with Thursday. So Thursday was originally for Jupiter or Zeus. And although Jupiter or Zeus in Roman and Greek mythology is like the main god, it's the god that is lightning and thunder. And in Germanic Norse mythology, who do we have that is got to do with lightning and thunder? It is Thor. So the lightning god. So Thor's day. You can see there's a pattern here. There's a god from Roman or Greek mythology. We take the same god from the Germanic mythology, and we made it that day. Same thing for Friday. So Friday was originally for Venus or Aphrodite. And that is the Roman or Greek goddess of love and beauty. And you can see what we're doing here. So in Germanic or Norse mythology, this would either be for Frigga, or sometimes people believe for Freya. And you can see how that becomes Friday. So it's actually the day for the goddess of love, the goddess of beauty. Saturday, we took it easy on ourselves, I suppose, and that we didn't change. We didn't change Saturday from the Greek-Roman mythology. It is from Saturn. Saturn was another god, also known as Kronos in Greek. But we didn't change that. I don't know why we didn't change it, but that's Kronos and Saturn. If we want to just know who they were like the grandfather. So if Zeus and Jupiter are the big god, the main god, they're the grandfather. They're the Titans. They came before. So we didn't change it. Maybe there wasn't a Germanic name that we wanted to use there. So it's still Saturn's Day, Saturday. And I'm sure you guys can guess, Sunday, very easy day. It hasn't changed much. It's the sun's day. So a very important celestial body. We have to honor it, Sunday. So that is the origin of the days of the week. I think it's really interesting to see where it comes from. Let's take a break and see what you guys have sent through. I'd like to know, you can also send this through. In your language, what do you call the days of the week? I know that that's different depending on different languages. Some languages just call it day 1 and day 2. So send through and let us know what you call it. Let's see if we have any questions or interesting stories. Someone has said sandwich the D is silent, which is true. Thank you, Gazala Anbrin. What else do we have here? Someone's asking, what is the difference between origins of words and a definition of a word? So I'm going to write that down. So a definition is what the word means. What the word means. So, for example, a cat is a little animal. That's its definition. Where the word comes from, well, that's probably from Latin. So the definition is what it means. The origin is where did it come from. We could say here as well, Monday is a day of the week. That's its definition. Where did the word come from? What's its origin? The moon's day. All right, let's see what else we have here. What else do we have? Okay. Someone said in my language for Monday is something you can't pronounce. Okay, well, if you can figure a way for us to pronounce it, that would be great. And we have more people joining us, someone from Afghanistan and from Zambia. Guys, remember that you can always rewatch what you missed. The playlist, the Cambly Live playlist will have everything. Let's go on to the origins of the days and origins of the months, which is a little complicated. So let's go through that. So originally, the year would start at March. And because we're talking about the northern hemisphere, this would be by springtime. So spring, everything's coming back to life. And what else they would do is they would start their wars again. So they would start conquest, or the army would start marching again. So March is again, and I'm going to make myself some space here, March is again named after the god of war, Mars. Because at that time, the army, the god of war's army, would start marching again, would start doing stuff again, because it was spring and people could start, after the long winter, doing stuff again. So that was actually the first month of the year. And then April, they say, is named after a Latin word, aperio, which meant to open, because in spring the blossoms open, and that's why it's called April, because the flowers would start to open. It's spring, things are starting to flourish. Then May and June were for the goddess Maya and Juno. So important goddesses that they wanted to honor, so they named a specific month after them. And then we get to the next months. And originally, July and August had different names. And I'm going to put them in blue. So originally, July was actually called Quintilis. Quintilis. And August was called Sextilis. Let me just check that. Yes, Sextilis. Because we're counting now. So we've had 1, 2, 3, 4. Quintilis means 5. Sextilis means 6. And originally, September was the 7th month. So sept means 7. Oct means 8. Na, or non, or means 9. And dec is 10. So originally, there were actually only 10 months that were named. And some of the months just had the numbers. The 5th month, the 6th month, 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th month. And then we had Julius Caesar, which is actually where our calendar really comes from today. And he wanted to have a solar calendar. So to have a solar calendar, he had to make the calendar bigger. He had to add an extra few months in order to make it correspond to our movement around the sun. So he added in January and February. January comes from the Roman god Janus, which was one of their things was being the god of beginnings. So you can see it's the beginning. And February was named after an ancient festival that they would do, a cleansing festival just before spring, because these are winter months in the Northern Hemisphere. But as you can see now, the numbers are not going to work anymore, because we added on an extra 2 months. 7, 8, 9, and 10 is actually 9, 10, 11, and 12. So that's why, even though it's the 9th month, it's actually called the 7th month. So it's a little confusing, but interesting. And then where do we get July and August from? Remember, this was the Julian calendar, or the calendar from Julius Caesar. So July is named for Julius Caesar, to honor him, I suppose, for the calendar and for other things as well. So that's named after Julius Caesar. And August is named after his nephew, Augustus, which means important, because he was the first official, real Roman emperor. So we took away Quintilis and Sextilis, and we got July and August. So that's where we get the months of the year. Again, send through for you guys, what is the names of your months and where do they come from as well? I'm sure we all like to hear that. In the meantime, let's do a couple of other interesting origins of words. These are words we use all the time. Let's now do a few foods and a few things that we all like to do, fun activities that we all like to do. So let me make myself some space here. All right, so the first one I want to look at is a word, something we all do as a pastime. We all experience this all the time, is the word movies. Because where does the word movies come from? Obviously, this is not an ancient word. We didn't have movies in ancient Rome. We didn't have it in Proto-European or in Proto-Germanic. So where does the word movies come from? Remember that movies themselves are only about 130 years old. So around about the 1890s, they started to invent cameras that could photograph images that moved. So before that, you would only have a photograph. You'd only have a still image, one image. That was it. You had something that did not move. And then after the 1890s, you had this whole new art form that moved. So you'd have these pictures. You'd have these pictures that moved. You'd see the guy run across the screen. So what did they call them? Because they moved, they called them movies. So it's something that moves. So I'm going to say here, art that moves. So that's where the word movies comes from. Art, pictures that move, the movies. So I think that is a fun origin. Where do we get that word? That's where we get the word. Let's see if you guys have sent anything else. So someone, Tina, has told us that in her country, days are named according to work. So on Sunday, we rest. It is called, and I hope I say this correctly, Nedele. So that's very interesting. So it's according to Tina, in her language, the days of the week are named according to the work done on those days or not done on those days. So that's interesting. Thanks for sharing that, Tina. And we have still people joining us from Pakistan. And we have a question. So the question is, the words that come from ancient languages, what is the ancient language that they most come from? And that's a good question. So one major language that we still use today for a lot of things is Latin. So Latin is actually used in medicine. We still have Latin words. Most medicines and studies of things are named after Latin words. Even law. So lawyers use a lot of Latin words. And Latin itself originally comes from Rome. It is a Roman language. And even the alphabet that we use today, the A, B, C, D alphabet, is called the Latin alphabet. So one of the major languages that we still feel an impact on today, even from thousands of years ago, is Latin. We use it in a lot of different places. And one interesting word from Latin that we find its origins is the word salary. So salary is something you are paid every month. So where does this word come from? They say that this word actually comes from salt. Because thousands of years ago, salt was really, really important and very hard to come by. So you couldn't just go to the store and get salt. It was really good to have, made things taste good, but it was hard to get. So salary, they say, comes from the word salarium, which means salt money. It's the money that you would use to buy your salt. So that's where they say salary comes from, because it was so important, you'd use your money to buy salt. And that's something we also use every day. Then another thing, another very common word that we all use, let me make a line here, is nice. One of the most overused, maybe even underappreciated words in English is the word nice. And this originally comes from French, and the original meaning, and this is why it's so interesting, is foolish. So originally, if you called someone nice, you were calling them foolish. You were saying they didn't know what they were doing, they are uneducated, they're doing stupid things. And then over time, because language evolves, this became what it is today, nice, which is something that is good, something that is reliable, something that is nice. So that is the origin of the word nice, again, something we use every day. Then, another often used word, a drink that a lot of people like. We have whiskey. So a lot of people like whiskey. And this we borrowed from Scottish. And it comes from the word, I don't know if I'm going to say this correctly because I'm not Scottish, Uskabal, which they said means water of life. So in other words, the Scottish really liked their whiskey, and they called it the water of life, and that Uskbau became whiskey when we got our hands on the word. So that is the origin of the word whiskey. And then I love this one. This is another French origin. So the word for muscle. So the word for muscle is from French, and it originally meant mouse. So that sounds a little weird. How did we get the word for muscle from mouse? It's because they said it looked like you had little mice running through your body, and so they called it a muscle. I suppose people had weird thoughts in those days. All right, let's look at a few more. Another one, I told you that some words come from proper names. So a person has a name and that becomes an actual word or a verb or a noun later on. So one that I find interesting, and it's a little bit topical, is the word maverick. So there is, right now, there's a movie doing very well. You guys may have seen it. It's a good movie called Top Gun Maverick. And the word maverick itself is actually a proper word. Maverick means someone that is rebellious or does his own thing, like the character, obviously, in the movie. But it actually comes from an actual person. So it comes from a person named Augustus Maverick, who was a cowboy. So he was probably someone that liked to do his own thing, maybe a bit rebellious. And his name, because maybe he was well known, especially in his area, became a word in English. So that's where the word maverick comes from. And you can see how it is still affecting us today, a word that didn't exist up until this guy, Augustus Maverick, and now it's part of English and part of popular culture. I think we're going to do two more, and then we'll call it a day. So if you have any more questions, please send them. Any more interesting thoughts about your word origins? So let's do... All right, another one that is very common. We all have these. Is the word nightmare. So a nightmare, obviously, it's a bad dream. We've all had bad dreams before. And this is another one that comes from mythology, from those old stories. And here we had a creature called a mare. So this was an evil spirit that they said would sit on your chest and give you bad dreams. So we have the word mare. It's happening at night. And that's where we get the word nightmare, this evil spirit that's giving you bad dreams. And again, that's a word we still use today. It's a very common word from mythology. And then, this is a fun one. Something, again, we all like to do. And this is a word that we stole. And this is the origin of the word barbecue. The origin of the word barbecue. And this comes from the Caribbean. So originally, this was a Caribbean word. And the word is, I want to get the spelling right, barbacoa, which means a frame or a group of sticks. So we can see how easily that can come to become barbecue. You have the stack of sticks, obviously making a fire. It's called a barbacoa, and that becomes a barbecue, and that's even abbreviated now today to BBQ, barbecue. So it's a word we stole, we made it our own, and now it's something we use all the time, everywhere. We all like a good barbecue. All right, I think we've done a lot of word origins today. If you guys liked the concept, let us know. Maybe we'll do another one. We can fill in other words that we didn't get to today. Again, thank you for joining us here on our latest Cambly Live session. If you joined us late, remember you can still see the video and all our other videos in the playlists. There's not only the live playlist, there are other playlists. Take a look, you'll learn what's. If it's your first time on Cambly, remember you can go to Cambly, you can sign up and find tutors like me. We can teach you anything you need, or whether it's grammar, whether it's just fun, whether it's conversation, whether it's preparing for an exam or an English proficiency test. So go take a look. And if you guys go now, you can use this discount code, Go Live, and you can get up to 36% off, something like that. So go check it out now. And please join us again for another Cambly Live session. I think there'll be a link below if you want to have any lessons with me on Cambly. And until we see you again, keep well, stay safe, keep learning. Bye for now.